Some significant challenges for the Harper government this week. There was the scathing report from Canada's information watchdog, and news she'll be taking the government to court over the destroyed long gun registry records. Also this week, a defeat at the Supreme Court, taking just minutes for top judges to rule against the Conservatives again on Omar Khadr. And a new poll suggests the race between the three main parties could be tighter than ever, all capped off by accusations the government is using your money to fund campaign material.
So the Prime Minister has increased the universal child care benefit in July.
And with that, we're back with round two of the Sunday Scrum. John and Rosie in Ottawa and Martin in Montreal. So, John, what do you make of the Pierre Poilievre so-called vanity video?
Oh, they're disgraceful. They absolutely are. And it's so depressing because I was in Ontario covering, when Rosie was in Quebec City, I was in Toronto or Queen's Park. And the Harris government pioneered this. The Harris government pioneered both advertisements that said Dalton McGuinty's not up to the job, so the attack ad, that was a Mike Harris invention, and the fake government ad, the ad that's paid for by taxpayers, but it's really just selling, Harris government policy. And it was so egregious that when Dalton McGuinty became premier, he put in an electoral commission that would vet the ads, and only ads that really were of government interest would be cleared. That's what Justin Trudeau was promising to do at the federal level if he becomes prime minister. But the Wynne government is dismantling the very commission that that Dalton McGuinty created. So even when you get the right rules in place, so as we've had in Ontario for a decade, governments come along and dismantle them so that the Wynne government can be every bit as foolishly partisan as the Conservative government is federally. It just makes you want to spit.
Martin?
Yeah. It's totally right. Every government becomes the thing that they hate or that they say they hate. 2006, this is a quote from Stephen Harper when trying to sell the Accountability Act. We want to end the use of taxpayer dollars for partisan polls and advertising. That was in 2006. Turn around, they're doing that exactly this with the Pierre Poilievre stuff. It's and the other thing that really bothers me about it too is that you're using taxpayer funding, you're using your civil servants' time, you're doing it on the weekend, double time, all that kind of stuff. Look at the page views. They've had 350 people watch it. That's like that's not even a town. You know what I mean? It's such a minute number. I just wonder why they do it when they're. I mean, I understand if they were getting like 10,000, 12,000 hits, they're not even getting a 500. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Don't be a Hamlet hater there, Marty. All right, moving on though. The long gun registry was back in the headlines again. This time, Canada's Information Commissioner says the Mounties, under direction from Parliament, illegally destroyed records related to the registry. Rosie, why don't we get you to explain this? Then we're going to throw to a clip with the Information Commissioner that you did. But just tell us how this all unfolded.
So basically, there was a request from a Canadian to have access to the gun registry data. The RCMP sort of delayed handing over the data and was supposed to hold on to it for this requester. The Access to Information Commissioner told the Minister of Public Safety at the time they have to hold on to it. It was Vic Taves. He said, okay, no worries. Then they destroyed it. That the Access to Information Commissioner believes was breaking the law. And she believes that there was, or there needs to be, a criminal investigation into this to whether there was direction, intent, why the RCMP did it. Instead of allowing that investigation to go ahead, the government has put inside the omnibus budget bill a clause which retroactively protects the RCMP from the fact that they did that. That's pretty unusual to try and rewrite history. And it's got the Information Commissioner, who is a very well-spoken, classy lady, really up in arms about what this could mean, not only for her, but for the future of laws if the government can simply rewrite things to protect people.
Okay, Rosie, Stephen Harper took a question on the controversy on Thursday, and I want to play you his response, followed by a short clip of Rosie's interview with the Information Commissioner, Suzanne Legault.
An argument has been made that there are elements in the Information Act, Access to Information Act, that contradict something in that other piece of legislation. At best, that is a loophole. I'm not sure there really is a contradiction, but to be perfectly clear, the government is clarifying the Information Act.
By putting these provisions into law, parliamentarians would be setting a precedent which is, in my view, unheard of.
All right, Marty, what do you make of some of the questions raised by the Commissioner? How serious do you think all this is?
The thing that I found interesting, what Ms. Legault said, was she raised the specter of ad scam back in the day, of whether or not that could have been investigated if this type of law was in place, which is a huge irony given how the Conservatives basically came to power through sort of collective fury over ad scam and what happened in Quebec. I'm trying to decide which is worse. Was it the crime or the cover-up? The idea of destroying documents that are the subject of an active investigation is egregious enough, but if you create legislation to sort of retroactively exonerate a national police force, is something that would happen in a banana republic. Like, that is insane. You simply cannot do that.
John?
Well, you probably can't, and if you can't, then the unofficial opposition, otherwise known as the Supreme Court, will strike that clause down and the investigation will go ahead. But this is great news for the Conservatives. They must be popping champagne corks. Because if you were sitting in the Conservative war room in the last few weeks, you've probably been saying to yourself, how can we get the gun registry back into the news? How can we remind people that we killed the gun registry? How can we tell our base that we shut down that vile
potentially
registry?
Doing something
and
illegal?
Look, the Information Commissioner taking us to court. Thank you so much, Ms. Legault. We are delighted that you have done this. They'll be putting it in their pamphlets as we speak.
Well,
really?
that day, the day I did those interviews, that was the Conservative talking point from Blake Richards. We were just, the RCMP was fulfilling the will of Parliament. We were the government that got rid of the gun registry. So 100% true. It's another way for them to remind Canadians that they did what they said they would do. They don't really care about the rest of it.
All right. Well, let's take a look at a poll that raised some eyebrows this week. I know you don't like talking about polls too much, but there could be something going on. It is a statistical dead heat for the top spot between the Conservatives and the NDP, fresh off that surprise victory for their provincial counterparts in Alberta, but very close behind the Liberal Party. What appears to be an extremely rare three-way race heading into a fall election. There was also another poll, I think, done by Forum Research that showed that the Conservatives are, in fact, ahead, but by 1 percentage point. So there are a couple of things out there to suggest that there could be, at this point, a three-way race. What do you think is going on here, John?
Well, I think you shouldn't be paying too much attention to polls, but it is 5 months out from an election, and one every now and then has to descend into horse race territory. This is fascinating. The Conservatives rolled out a huge budget with all sorts of tax cuts and balanced budgets, and then they sent their ministers all across the country to sell it. Hasn't done them a darn bit of good. They're in fact down, if anything, from where they were a few months ago. The Liberals responded with their own tax cut, their own child care policy, rolled it out across the country. They've been pounding it for the last 2 weeks. They appear to be moving into third place. And Thomas Mulcair, who's just been, the steady as he goes turtle, pounding his message day after day, week after week, month after month, suddenly he's in second place. Is it because of the win by the NDP in Alberta, and he's got a bit of wind in his sails as a result of it? It could be, but if you are the Conservatives or the Liberals, you should be very concerned right now, because you've been messaging and campaigning and doing everything possible for months, and it's gotten you nowhere. Yeah. And the NDP, look, they're right up there with you, and they've done not a darn thing.
And John, so we won't pay attention to polls too much, but you wrote a piece in the Globe this weekend that I thought was interesting. Maybe we should pay attention to the Prime Minister's travels. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we just sort of took a look at, as you know, politicians go to where they think they're in trouble and they need to shore up support, and where they think they can make gains, and they want to show the flag. So very interestingly, over the last couple of months, the PM has been in Saskatoon, which used to be a safe place. But you know what? The NDP has designs on Saskatoon. He's been in Winnipeg. Again, should have been a safe place, but the Liberals have hopes for Winnipeg. And he's been touring around a lot in Quebec, because the Conservatives think they might actually be able to make gains in Quebec. So it's been interesting to watch.
Marty,
and of course, endless 905, 905,
yes, 905. Outside of Toronto. All right, Marty, what do you think? In a three-way battle, if there is a three-way battle, who benefits the most?
I take John's point. Conservatives are spinning their wheels a little bit, as are the Liberals. Sort of trending very flat while the NDP is coming up. That said, about 3-4 months ago, before he became a minister, Aaron O'Toole said something very interesting to me. He says, we need a strong NDP in this race, certainly in Ontario, but elsewhere in the country, to sort of help split that sort of center-left vote. So I can't help but think, but something like this is to have two parties at sort of the divide and conquer aspect for the Conservatives. somewhat benefits that party, the governing, the party in power.
Final thought from you, Rosie?
Yeah, totally. The Conservatives need the NDP to do like medium well. They don't want them to go too high or too low, and that's how they split votes. If there's one party that should be worried, it's the Liberals. I don't think they should be in panic mode, but they've rolled out their big, giant policy, and this is what's happened. They're going to have to come up with something.